Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Michael Urie, who stars as Brian on the Apple TV Plus comedy series Shrinking. Michael, I love this show. I love the
Oh,
second season is great. I know there was so much enthusiasm, obviously, after the first season for what could happen in the second season, and kind of like, I guess, just broadly, like at the start when you got the scripts for where the show was going to go. Like, how, I mean, did it feel great to see that maybe that enthusiasm was validated, I guess, for what might happen?
yeah. I mean, absolutely. From the beginning of this show, I have thought if I get one scene, if I get one good joke in an episode, I'll be happy. I am playing with the big boys. I have been battling imposter syndrome since day one. And if I can just get one line, one zinger, one scene, I'll be happy. And every time they exceed my expectations. They have a way, these writers have a way of taking care of each character every single episode. And every single episode, we all have something going on, and our needles move.
Mhm.
Something happens to us, and we change, and it's a 30-minute show, and there's like 10 of us, and they do it every single time. It's really impressive, and I think it's probably the only time I've ever had a job in TV where when I get the script, I don't have any questions. You know what I mean? I don't wonder how am I supposed to say this, or what is this joke here? What does this mean? Or why am I doing I never have. The only time I ever have questions is if if we don't get a full script. They're like, okay, this is the scene we're gonna shoot today. And I'm like, well, what happened before and after? Like that happens sometimes. Where like, the writers are, they're pushing some things forward and waiting on other things. Um but when I'm looking at the material that I get, when I see what Brian's going on with, I get it. I just get it because it's so clear and it's so specific.
One of the things I love about this season too, and I was wondering if you noticed, I mean, like, so the first season is 10 episodes. This season is 12 episodes. And like for me as a viewer, I'm like you said, there's like 10 characters. Everyone is like really fleshed out. And I felt like this reminds me a little bit of like streaming shows now. You're used to like 10 episodes and we're out. And it's by the time you get the 10th episode, you're like, man, I wish I had more episodes. And this season, I was like, this is great because it felt like you really had a lot more room to breathe with the whole show and with you guys as well. And like kind of like giving everybody a moment. Does that like I'm assuming that also helps, like having the extra time too for you, I guess? Or you yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
I think so. I think it's really, like 12 episodes is very different than 10.
Hmm.
And there's a real after six, when you realize this is the halfway point, you've really established something. It's amazing how much more one episode can how much further it can take you.
Hmm.
And I'm really glad we're doing 12 because um, I think that six was the perfect halfway point, and this last half, which is currently airing, we just aired seven, and it's going to be a roller coaster to the finish.
Yeah. So like a big thing with this season obviously is I guess I would say a theme of forgiveness, right? Certainly like he's that over and over again with all these relationships and kind of like accepting people where they are. And I guess like
Yeah,
you have an early moment I thought in the beginning of the season is great with Brian and Jimmy where we're kind of like with the Jimmy Gabby deception from the first season. And
right.
you know a great thing I love that scene where you guys like you and Jason are great. I think you say something like, "Oh, would we even be friends if we met right now?" Which I think is like a really great scene and like a really great sentiment too, just in general. Like you think about that with like old friends or whatever. And I guess can you talk a little about like yeah, getting to play that dynamic with Brian and Jimmy and like kind of like getting to say that kind of stuff, I guess, on the show, I guess.
That was to me getting to say that and getting to play that sentiment between old friends and specifically old friends whose friendship bridged a coming out.
Hmm.
Because Brian was straight when they met in the closet, and then he came out, and of course Jimmy was cool with it, and they stayed friends. But the guy that Jimmy became friends with was a different guy, like a
Hmm.
different person. And not just like we change over the years. Like, no, he was different. He was lying to himself about who he was. You know, that is a unique thing to queer people. Anybody who's like lying to themselves, when you're in the closet, you are not your whole self. And it isn't until you come out of the closet that you can really be your true self. And so that was something I was super proud of. Um, a sentiment that I had not seen before, between a gay character and a straight best friend.
Mhm.
I have a lot of very close straight friends, and we grappled with that. Um, when I came out, that period of time between like the person that you became friends with and me, are we still compatible? Are we still meant to be friends? It is not just a gay straight dynamic. I think it's true for any long-term relationship when things change. I just last night saw somebody that I went to um, drama school with that I haven't seen in a long time, haven't hung out with, really hung out with in a long time, and in one respect, we fell back into our old rhythms immediately, but in another respect, I don't really know him anymore. Like
Right.
he has so much life, and I have too. And so, what we really should do after a quick hang is have a long hang. Really delve into like, okay, what's different about you? How have you changed?
Did you get like a lot, like you said, like getting to do that? Did you get a lot of feedback, I guess, when that episode aired, or did you see people like, did like people like respond to that to you, I guess, where you're like, oh, that was cool. Like, I've not seen that before, like kind of like you're saying.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have heard from people um, who were touched by that sentiment. And this show over and over again, it finds a way to deal with very real mental health um, issues in a very real way, but also in a funny way,
Mhm.
which makes it so much more, I think, accessible and easier to digest and take and accept. The thing that I've gotten the most feedback for, though, is the relationship between Brian and Lewis, that
Yes.
the character that Brett Goldstein plays, because that is one of those like even I didn't. I mean, I was reading it and I was like, "Whoa, what? I'm the guy who brings him into the fold." I couldn't believe it. And on the other hand, it is kind of inevitable that it be Brian, um, because he is he's the one that's in the right place at the right time,
Mhm.
physically and emotionally. He's emotionally in a place where he can not he can hear what Lewis has to say, whereas at that point, Jimmy and Alice certainly cannot. They're not ready to hear anything from him. And he has just learned that he has this empathy, this sort of tool that he's actually good at. And earlier in that episode, Jimmy says, "That's you. You are that guy. You can be that empathetic guy. You could be a good dad because you do have this in you." And it, if he hadn't learned that earlier that day, I don't know what he would have. I don't know how he would have reacted. So it's just beautifully crafted. They make things that seem impossible actually inevitable.
The writing is so good. Also, I was thinking of the scene where you have where Brian and you're telling Al, your character Brian is telling Alice about Jimmy. I'm sorry, about Lewis, and you
Yeah.
kind of have this very long, incredibly detailed monologue that you bring back later, obviously throughout the season, which is really funny. And I
Yes.
guess like yeah, like that writing too. And I feel like the way obviously it's like I'm sure that is something that was very written and stuff, but it feels like the way you perform it, and just feels like very naturalistic, right? Like almost like not written, but even though it obviously is, you know what I mean? Like I just think that was a great scene too, and the writing is so sharp. You also get to do a great Brett Goldstein impression in that scene, which I think is hilarious, and I keep hearing in my head, sorry.
What's funny about him is like we all know him as Roy Kent, but that's not what he's like at all in real life. He's not that guy. He's more like this guy. And we've got to spend a lot of time with him now on set, and he's such a sweet, cheeky guy. And he was there when we shot that scene, and so he watched me do it, and I think he probably said, "I don't talk like that." Of course he does, but that was like the greatest gift any writer has ever given me. That speech, that monologue, getting to do a bona fide monologue. Um, because that doesn't happen on TV very often, unless it's like a political speech or a lawyer summation. You don't really see people just talk on TV alone for periods of time. And we do it in the theater a lot, but that was a real gift. And then to get to repeat it a few episodes later, essentially verbatim. Um, and I was just last night actually at Once Upon a Mattress. I'm in this Broadway show right now,
Yeah.
and one of the crew guys grabbed me backstage and he was like, "How much of that is made up? How much of that is you just making it up?" And I said, It's not, I'm not making it up. That's written. That's Yes, we improvise sometimes on the show, but that monologue I learned at home and then came in and did it on set.
I was wondering like how much time like I'm sure there's not a lot of like rehearsals, but like yeah, you're like rehearsing it for yourself. But I mean, how many like getting the rhythms of that even like how much time did you have to spend like getting like doing it over and over again for you to like make it feel like it does feel like you're just off the dome basically.
Yeah, I had to rehearse it a lot. And that was the scene they gave me early. They gave it to me, early. They were like, "This is coming up." They didn't get the whole script. They just gave me that scene. They were like, "You're going to be shooting this. We just want you to have it so that you can start to learn it because obviously it's a lot." And, in TV, so much of what we do is like a 2-minute scene here, a 3-minute scene there with three people, two people, and you only have a few lines to learn. And we use short-term memory. But this was something that I knew I was going to do and then repeat later. They told me I was going to be repeating it again. So I knew I couldn't use short-term memory. I had to use like the real thing. So I had it ahead of time and I spent a lot of time on it
It,
um, alone. And then I worked with Lukita. I got to do it Lukita and I met up early that day before the scene and we rehearsed in her trailer a few times um and then they were really generous. They let me do it a lot on set and I just knew that like I wouldn't feel comfortable playing until I'd gotten it right once. Do you know what
mhm.
I mean? Like you're shooting a scene that's really complicated like that. You don't really breathe until you've gotten one in the can and you think, okay, that works. Now we can really have fun. And you also like, there's 100 people there. It's not just me and Lukita. There's a lot of other people there. And I think this was like the end of the day, at the end of the week. And I was like, all right, I don't want people to worry that we're gonna be here all night. So I want to get in there, get it right, and then we can start to mess up and play and break it. But it was
It-
it was and it was cool. And it was a special day because Randall Winston was one of our regular directors. He was directing the episode. Brett was on set. He had written the
mhm.
episode. I believe Bill was there for the rehearsal. He was around. It was a good day. It was a very special episode and a very special day.
Do you get like you mentioned like Lakita and you like there's Brian has a lot more to do with Alice this season obviously and like I guess like was that like cool to get to like like this is such a deep ensemble it feels like you said there's like 10 actors in the show just crushing it even like Damon Wayans Jr. right coming on like all these great people are just in the show. I guess it's like fun to be able to like do stuff with like Lakita and like expand out from where you were in the first season.
Yes. And I would say at the end of season one, if you'd said, who do you want more with next season? I would have said Lukita. Because that relation, I knew her, Brian knew Alice her whole life, knows her whole life. He was friends with Jimmy before Jimmy even met Tia. So he knew Tia. Like he goes way back. And that's a really interesting dynamic. Like I've known her whole life. She's known me her whole life. So I was really, really glad that we got some time together in this season and got to explore what that relationship is. And even if it is like not very, they don't know each other that well, even though they've known each other that long. That's what's cool. That's so real. We all have people in our lives that we've known forever that we don't really know all that well because for whatever reason we're not compatible or but this relationship, that scene where I bring her to Lewis's apartment is so special and the way that scene ends with that forgiveness, I think is only possible because of that chemistry.
Mhm.
That chemical mixture of Brian, Lewis, and Alice is what facilitates that to happen. It's like impossible but inevitable.
Yeah, it's really great. You also get, I mean, there's obviously so much more between Brian and Charlie this season, right? So you get more with Devin as well. And I guess, yeah, how was that to get to explore their relationship and obviously so much of, the adoption subplot as well. But like just in general, like Brian and Charlie, I guess, how was that for you get to like really kind of flesh that out more than you had obviously previously?
Well, I love Devin Kawaoka, who plays Charlie. We were friends actually before the show.
Oh,
I,
funny. Okay.
I didn't get in the job. They just came and they were like, "We're thinking of casting this guy. What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, I love that guy." Um, and we have all these fun scenes with Stuart, played by Brian Gallivan. He's our adoption liaison, and he's one of our writers. He's actually one of the
Oh,
writers.
funny. Okay.
he's a really funny man. And yeah, I love this stuff. I love all this stuff this season because I think that Brian and Charlie are gay men of a certain age that um, for most of their, formative years did not know that marriage was going to be possible for them. Like, like me,
Mhm.
up until 2014, um, it was not an option. And so we did not dream of it. Maybe Brian and Charlie dreamed of having a wife and kids before they came out of the closet, but as gay men, as gay adults, that was not possible for them. And adoption was more possible, but it was also a very complicated thing. And so I can relate. I can certainly relate to Brian um, when Charlie starts to say, "This is what I want. I want to be married in season one. I want to be a father in season two." For Brian, he's like, "I don't even know. Like, I'm barely holding on." I think when we come out, we start over. Like the clock goes back to zero in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And Brian has exuded confidence so sort of blindly for so many years that now that we've gotten to know him in the events of shrinking, we see that he's skipped a lot of steps, and you can't skip those steps. You eventually do have to go back and pick them up. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing Brian do a lot in this, which is really like human and cool. And we've seen gay characters deal with coming out. We've seen them deal with parents that don't accept them. I've played all these parts. We've seen them deal with weddings and adoptions, but we've never quite seen the psychology, which I think is what's cool about shrinking, is you're really seeing the psychology of this guy and why is it hard for him? Why does he have trouble dealing with, you know, Charlie, who is essentially more evolved, far more progressive than Brian in terms
Mhm.
of getting married and being a father and having a baby. He knows what he wants, and Brian's just kind of taking one step at a time, um, exuding confidence and you know playing pickleball.
I mean, that's, I think, like you're saying there too. I think one of the things that's really great about the show is that giving the space to show that, right? Like, I think all these, like, giving the space to these characters, like another show, maybe you don't have as much room to do this, but there is, so they somehow make it work with, like you said, like there's 10 characters, it's 12 episodes, but everything feels like very, like very focused and like, you really get to flow. It just works so well. I think it's a real testament to the show and like all of you guys as an ensemble and the writing.
And any you can put any two characters together and something magical will happen.
It's true.
You know,
Do you have like, so obviously ends great, third second season. What are your hopes, I guess, for season three, and like what are you hoping we do next? I mean, like there's obviously places we could go with Brian, certainly.
I mean, totally. And I would feel silly trying to come up with what it might be because it'll never be as good as what they come up with.
Sure.
I have some great stuff with Luke Tenney and Ted McGinley, two actors that I adore. Really, what I want is more and more and more. I want more with them. I want more with Lukita, and I want more with Jimmy and Gabby. I want more with Liz, and I want scenes with Summer. She's hilarious. I want to be in a scene
So
with
good.
Alex's friend Summer. Um, and I look forward to seeing what happens with Charlie and our bundle of joy.
Hmm.
The possibilities are. Oh, by the way, I'm also in this show with Harrison Ford. So yeah, I want more with him.
I didn't even mention him. I didn't even
No,
mention
I
him.
didn't even
Obviously,
mention
like
him.
it's so crazy that like I'm every day I'm like every time I watch this I'm like, man, Harrison Ford is like so, and he fits so seamlessly in with the ensemble, which is just crazy. But he's like so famous, obviously. Like, it's like just wild to me that he's like so easy. Like he just seems like he fits right in. He just totally
Yeah,
nailed it. It's really great. Michael Urie, you watch Shrinking on Apple TV Plus. It's a fantastic show. I love season two and look forward to more in the future. Thank you, Michael.
awesome. Thanks,
Thanks.
Christopher.